Hey guys, so today we are going to be doing a series review for Dragon Ball Daima. The series has now concluded, and I wanted to give myself like a week or so just to be able to sort of mentally prepare for a series review. I didn't want to like watch the last episode and then like the same day or the next day just immediately jump into doing a series review, because it would give me a little bit of time to clear my head and really it's never going to be an unbiased opinion. It's never going to be an objective opinion, but the best that I can sort of exit the hype phase of the end of the series, which is going to be the most exciting part of the series, which is not surprising, to sort of think about how I wanted to talk about the series and what my overall thoughts were. So this will obviously contain spoilers. This is not a non-spoiler review of the series, so if you're expecting that, maybe just click off and come back once you've watched the whole thing. I know the dub is very behind, so that is an unfortunate part about how they've handled this. At this point, it's really not that surprising to me that for whatever reason, like, they just can't get the dub and the sub on the same timeline or the same schedule. So I know that we are very behind on the dub. Hopefully they do not do this in the future whenever we get more Dragon Ball series or projects released. But I've jotted down some pros and cons on like a notepad here to go through. I do have the Dragon Ball Daima page of the Dragon Ball Wiki pulled up in the background in case we need to use it. I don't really think I'm going to need it, but just in case we need to illustrate something or show something, I will have this ready to go. So I think what I'll do is I'll go through the pros first, and then we'll go through the cons, and then I'll just give my overall rating of the series, how I liked it, and what I thought they could have done differently. So the pros, I have 4 pros and 4 cons. The first of the 4 pros that I want to talk about is what I think most people enjoy the most about the series. And as a Dragon Ball series, I don't think this is going to be very surprising, and it is the fights. The fights were some of the best we've seen from any Dragon Ball media, whether it be manga, anime, Super Z, GT. The fights were very good. I thought in particular the animation for the fights was very, very good. The choreography for the fights. I tend to I guess sort of think about fighting in terms of animation and then choreography separately. They kind of play together in the same element, but in terms of fight choreography, like me personally, I think like OG Dragon Ball probably had some of the best fight choreography, but I think a lot of times Z and some parts of like the movies did definitely have a lot better animation than Dragon Ball did. But I thought both choreography wise and animation wise and art wise, Daima, once we sort of take a look at the last like 3 episodes, 4 episodes, and even some of the in-between fights too, like the Vegeta versus Tamagami 2 fight, and then Goku versus Tamagami 1. Those, the choreography, the animation, and the art in those fights, very, very, very good. The second pro that I have is expansion of lore points and the Dragon Ball universe overall. This is actually also going to play into one of the cons that I have as well. But I thought for the most part, whenever they tend to spend time with like world building and new characters and all these different things, it really does make the Dragon Ball universe feel bigger. And this is something that we saw a lot with Super as well, right? When even in Battle of Gods, that technically which is classified as a Z movie, when Goku fights Beerus and Beerus is like, oh, this is just one of the 12 universes that exist. And it's like, okay, well, up until this point, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball GT, all the movies, all of that's been taking place just in Universe 7. And now we have 11 other universes we can explore too. So that really did seem like a huge thing at the time. And, with the demon realm now being open, I guess, essentially to more exploration. I mean, we've kind of seen the majority of it, I would argue, but there definitely are a lot of lore points in here that we were exposed to. We had explanations of how the universe was created with, I think it was Rymus was the name of the character. The third eye thing, we had the old kings of the demon realm, Abra, who was Deborah's father. They got some lore expansion there. The modulite is like the new element they used. Bulma now has access to that. And there definitely are a lot of plot points that were not resolved. And this is something that I've been talking about. If you guys have watched my weekly series reviews or my weekly episode reviews, this is something I've been talking about for a long time. But to me, Daima almost seems like it is like a bridge to something else. It's almost like it seems like it's a bridge. I mean, technically it is a bridge from Z to Super, but we don't really have I guess like specific connections between the stories yet. I think what's going to happen is whenever they bring Dragon Ball Super back, because Dragon Ball Super is not done, the manga is still ongoing. They've mentioned numerous times that it is simply on hiatus. It is on break. It is not finished. So I think the reason why they decided to do that and then weave in the story of Dragon Ball Daima in between when they're going to start the next Super chapter is because I think a lot of the elements from Daima are going to be a factor in the next Super manga. And then hopefully down the line, we get Super back airing as an anime series, and then we can see all these things sort of play in to the rest of Super. So I think things like, you know, the Modulite, Bulma having access to that. I think things like just the entire Demon Realm existing, Majin Ku being sort of the end, the ruler of the Demon Realm at the end of Daima. We have the different things going on with Goku's forms now. Vegeta has Super Saiyan 3. I think some of these things are definitely going to play a part in the continuation of Super, and I think a lot of the new lore points and the expansion of the Dragon Ball universe is definitely going to play a factor in the continuation of Super. So hopefully we do see that down the line. I mean, it's possible it's just not going to happen, right? I mean, it's always on the table, but I think a lot of these things that they did in Daima were to set up the continuation of the story. So that's, I think, what we'll see. The point that I have as number 3 kind of fits in with number 2, but it is new characters. Every time we get like new characters in Dragon Ball that are majorly important to the plot of the story or the plot of the arc that we're currently talking about, it does, I think, add a lot of depth to not just the current arc, but also it adds a lot of enrichment to the Dragon Ball just franchise overall, right? In Superhero, we had the introduction of the villains. It was Magenta. We had Dr. Hedo. Obviously, they haven't shown up again after Superhero because we haven't really gotten past Superhero and Super yet. That's sort of been the last manga chapter. But we also had like Gamma 1, Gamma 2, and I think a lot of people, you know, when they first saw the designs of the Gammas, they were like, I don't know. Like there was a lot of doubt over how the Gammas were going to be handled, how they were going to be introduced. Oh, we're getting more androids. Can't believe they're doing this again. That was what a lot of people were thinking when they were first shown. But after watching the movie, I think after people have had chance to digest the superhero story and how the characters interacted with each other, I think a lot of people did tend to warm up to things like Gamma 1 and Gamma 2, especially Gamma 2, right? And I think the same thing probably is going to happen with Daima. We introduced new characters like Glorio. We have Panji. Those are like the two, I guess, like, I don't even know how to call it, like the two new additions to the normal crew. We have characters like Neva, who's, if there's one character I would say probably is going to play a massive role in a future arc of Super, it would probably be Neva. Seemingly an unlimited amount of abilities he has access to. We have Goma and Degasu, who I'll talk about later, but Goma in particular, we know that they're now sealed in a bottle or perfume bottle or whatever the hell they sealed them in. It was like some kind of bottle. You know, they're around. It's, you know, it could be like a Demon King Piccolo situation. We could see them come back later, something like that. So yeah, Majin Ku I thought was like a really funny character. Majin Du is now, I guess, you know, we have him there as well. Aritsu, we got more backstory on her. So a lot of these characters I think could play a major part in the future of Dragon Ball as well. And then the fourth pro that I have on my list here is it was funny and had a lot of classic Toriyama elements. Like I just said, Majin Ku in particular, I thought probably was my favorite character that was newly introduced in Daima. I think a lot of people probably share that sentiment. There was a lot of very Toriyama-esque elements of the story that were facilitated through Majin Ku. I thought the way that they defeated Goma was a very Toriyama-esque thing to do. You know, they, you know, introduced Super Saiyan 4 full power. Goku did this Kamehameha that like shattered the entire Demon Realm, went through the entire thing, shook the universe. And then actually all it took was Majin Ku slamming the book on the back of his head to beat him. And we see this multiple times throughout Daima, right? It's not just like this one element. It's things like, okay, we had this whole they literally dedicated almost an entire episode to the backstory of the third eye. And ultimately what happened was like some like very stupid interaction between like it was like the girl with the hat who Haibisu gives the third eye to. And then that's how Degasu gets it. And then eventually it ends up in the hands of Goma. And so there's this very convoluted thing. And oh my God, Goma finally gets access to the third eye. And then they have the post-credit scene where actually there's 2 more third eyes. And all the entire reason why they were able to get the third eye is because I guess Abra or whoever, like the original. No, it would be before that. Like, oh, they actually ended up just buying it from a convenience store at the end of the day. So this like massively world-changing, powerful artifact was just a convenience store item at the end of the day. So it's things like that where Toriyama sets these expectations, and then, you know, either in the same episode or later on, they're just completely subverted and made into like just essentially gags, right? And that is a very Toriyama. It's a very Dr. Slump way of handling things. Like, if you guys have seen or read Dr. Slump, that happens a lot in Dr. Slump. So I really did feel a lot of Toriyama's influence on Daima, and that makes sense because they mentioned that he was very, very involved with Daima. So those are the 4 pros that I have with Daima. I personally really enjoyed the series a lot, and at the end of this video, I'll give my overall rating, but it is pretty good. But that is to say, there are certainly some cons with the series. I don't think they handled everything perfectly. So as I had 4 pros, I also have 4 cons as well here. So the first con that I have is pacing. This kind of fits in with the second point, which I'll talk about as well. But first of all, just the pacing, and this kind of fits in with the episodes individually too, not just like the overall series pacing, but the pacing of the episodes themselves. So sometimes we'll have, you know, episodes where it's okay, you know, the spaceship broke down and we need to figure out how to fix it, and there's an explanation of how modulite works, and it's between Ponji and Bulma, and then, you know, we got to go to we got to go to this shop, and we got to like figure out how to get to the next part, and then there's like the royal police that interfere with everything, and there's like this the giant people that come in and, you know, sort of mess things up. So there's a lot of that in the series, and that's like one episode, right? And it kind of just makes it like, as you're watching the episode, it kind of just makes you feel like not much is going on here. I don't really want to call it filler, but that's kind of what it felt like. And then the next episode, like directly after this, would have like, okay, we got this going on. There's plot point A, there's plot point B, plot point C. And then at the same time, we have a completely other thing happening, and it just cuts back and forth constantly. Like, there's this, the episode, I think, that really illustrates this, what I'm saying here, to the best that I can remember that this happened with, is it was, I believe, the Super Saiyan / Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta versus Tamagami 2 fight, that episode, because what happened was they had Vegeta fighting Tamagami 2, and then at the same time they were like cutting back and forth between that fight and Majin Buu fighting Tamagami 1. And to me, it felt like this was one of the most just, I don't want to call it a rushed episode, because it really wasn't rushed. It just felt like there was almost too much going on, too many important things going on at the same time. And then I believe it was the episode prior to that, it was almost like literally nothing happened to actually facilitate the advancement of the plot. So there was a lot of that throughout Daima. But just to springboard this point into my second point for the cons, it really did feel like the entire series was too short. The series was 20 episodes, and I think a lot of the issues that had to do with pacing wouldn't feel as bad if the series was more than 20 episodes. Honestly, I really think the series could have been 40, like literally just double the amount of episodes. And all they really would have needed to do is just give a bit more screen time and exploration and description and action scenes to everything that happened. Like they don't even need to really change the plot of the series to make it longer. All they needed to really do was just, I think, give more spotlight to a lot of the fighting and important plot points that happen, because it does kind of feel like a lot of the plot points and, you know, Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta versus Tamagami 2 and Majin Buu versus Tamagami 1, and then, okay, we have Super Saiyan 4 Goku, and then, okay, the final episode was, you know, Goku defeating Goma, everybody kind of, you know, appointing Majin Buu as the head of the demon realm, and then they all go back on a spaceship, and they don't even show them actually getting back to Earth, because there's just literally was not enough time to wrap everything up in one episode. So I think what they could have done is, again, I'm completely fine with them having episodes where, okay, there's this, you know, giant, as I think it was called the Megas. That was like the infamous episode where literally nothing really happened to continue the plot of the series. Episodes like that I'm fine with. But the reason why it felt more impactful on the series to have those episodes where nothing happened is because we kind of knew ahead of time that this was only going to go for 20 episodes. And so it almost felt like we were on it was like a tight schedule almost. We felt like we were kind of pressed for time throughout the running of the series, the airing of the series, because we would have episodes like that, and they're like, okay, well, we have this episode. Are we really going to be able to do everything we need to do before the thing ends? And that's kind of the way I felt. So sort of the pacing not being as good as it should have been, combined with the fact that I think the series overall was just too short, was a pretty big problem. And that's one of the bigger problems I've seen most people talking about on social media when it comes to Daima. This point also, the next one I think is probably, especially after the end of Daima, after the 20th episode aired, this is what I've seen most people talking about, which is continuity. I'm going to just call it continuity. It really is just what is canon. I don't really, to be honest, I don't really care about like what is canon and what isn't canon, but mostly it's just about what fits into the existing story of Dragon Ball, right? We have Z, Daima, and Super. So if we look at the actual timeline of how things happen in Dragon Ball, Daima is supposed to be before Super. And people are looking at Super. At the beginning of Super, Goku fights Beerus, only goes Super Saiyan 3. Vegeta doesn't go Super Saiyan 3 at any point in Super. So I think a lot of people are looking at, what happened in Daima. Goku has a new form. Vegeta has a new form. We never see those things happen in Daima. There's also some explanations of things that happen in Daima that don't really correlate or correspond with what should have happened based on what we've seen from Dragon Ball Super. So there are certain, I think, continuity, I don't want to call them continuity errors, but there's continuity issues that have arisen because of Daima. So again, from a personal standpoint, I don't really care about this as much as most people do, which I understand. Like, if you are somebody that is looking at this and you're like, okay, this kind of detracts from the story, and this kind of detracts from the immersion of Dragon Ball as an entire franchise, I can understand that standpoint, and I completely respect and resonate with that. But for me, I personally don't really care too much. I don't. Daima clearly was something that was not in consideration when the story of Dragon Ball Super was being created. However, I will concede for sure that because Daima was something that was created after Super, they could have input some kind of explanation into Daima to explain why certain things happen in Daima that don't really correlate with Super. Like, why does Goku not go Super Saiyan 4 in Super? Why does Vegeta not go Super Saiyan 3 in Super? Why does certain things happen with Supreme Kai in Super? Like, why is Kibito Shin, not, or Kibito Kai, I guess the English, why does Kibito Kai not, why is he fused, right? Stuff like that, I think. Kind of there's like a lack of explanation in terms of how it fits with Super, and so I understand that that's a big thing that people don't really understand and are kind of upset about, and I completely get that as well. For me, it doesn't really make a huge difference for me, but I'm going to put that as a con because I think they could have handled that way better than they did. And then the last thing I have in terms of cons is redundant and pointless characters. This wasn't like a huge major issue. It was more so kind of just fitting into that kind of pacing too short kind of issue. It's all kind of the same thing. Like, they spent a lot of time on characters like Degasu, who didn't really matter at the end of the day, and things like this one I think in particular was kind of egregious. The Walmart Ginyu Force, like it was the Royal Police, like those guys, and it was very clearly just supposed to be like, oh my god, they redid the Ginyu Force for like the third time or something. So I wasn't really a huge fan of the Ginyu Force guys. I don't think so. My argument with Degasu, right? I thought Degasu at the end of the day ended up being essentially a completely worthless character. Like, why was he actually in the story to begin with? He's Supreme Kai's brother. It kind of felt like when they introduced him and when they started talking about who he was and Supreme Kai said he was his brother, it kind of felt like they were building up his presence to be something pretty important at the end of the day, but it ended up not being anything important. My argument with Degasu is the only thing I could really see is they're setting something up for down the line where it's going to matter. Again, I think a lot of what happened in Daima is going to play a role later on in Super when they bring the manga back. So I definitely think it's possible that he does something in Super down the line. That's why they really felt the need to even introduce his character here anyway, so it just kind of feels more connected with Daima. But as far as his role is concerned in the enclosed Daima series, it really didn't amount to anything. So he was kind of a waste of time. But to me, it really is like that Ginyu Force knockoff team. Really, I mean, it took a lot of like, it was like if you add up how much time they spent on that like Ginyu Force thing, I mean, like how long, like it was like if you add everything, it was like a full episode. right? We have the thing where they're introduced to the Ginyu Force, and he's talking to and they're talking to Goma and Degasu. We have the scene where they're like in the convenience store and they meet up with Majin-Ku and Majin-Do. Obviously, that was supposed to be more of like a gag, sort of like, you know, joke scene. And then we have the whole scene where they're fighting Vegeta. And I think you add everything together, how much time do they actually spend on these guys? Like almost a full episode of time, right? So, I mean, to me, that just really doesn't feel like it needed to exist. And again, that just feeds into and plays more into the first two cons I mentioned, which were pacing and the series being too short. Just again, we're pressed for time, yet we're adding things like this worthless, you know, team of characters that don't actually amount to anything at all. And Vegeta just effortlessly stomps them with no effort in base form. Like, does that really need to happen? So I don't know. It also kind of felt like, this is not actually on my list of cons, but I'll add this as like a bonus con. It felt like there weren't really a lot of challenging elements for the main cast of characters until the very end, right? Goku doesn't even go anything beyond Super Saiyan. Well, he very briefly goes Super Saiyan 2 versus Tamagami 1, right? But Goku doesn't really actually try until he gets to Goma, right? Until episode, like, what is it, like 17, he goes Super Saiyan. Actually, no, it might be 18 where he goes Super Saiyan 3 for the first time. So like 2 episodes before the end of the series, we finally actually see Goku like trying. I would classify him going Super Saiyan 3 as trying. So it almost felt like we went through the first, I don't know, 85 or 90% of the series with the stakes being relatively low, because we knew that I mean, to be fair, we kind of had the same, that's kind of been an issue with Dragon Ball for a long time, where like we know the stakes are not there because like Beerus and Whis are there, and we know that the end of Z is there, so we know everyone's going to be fine. But we went into the Demon Realm, and like the Tamagami 1 was like relatively strong, but Goku ended up beating him in Super Saiyan 2 almost immediately. And so from that point forward, we kind of knew like, okay, until we get to like the end of the series, we're not really going to be super challenged here. So that was also kind of just like, they could have made the Tamagami stronger. They could have made like the Majins a little bit stronger to pose more of a threat at the end of the day. But just to input something after I actually finished recording the rest of this video, I just wanted to actually come back and input one little thing that I did kind of think about here. So on the point of them not really being super challenged until the end, just to really give like an illustration of how much we actually go through. So this is really the point where Goku finally starts to like exert himself, when he goes Super Saiyan 3 for the first time as in his mini form. We have all of this happens, right? So we have this is the beginning of Daima. We have this all the way down, all the way here. And then from here down, this is the rest of the series. And this is the end, like all the way to here. So it isn't until here, like this highlighted blue text is really where we start to see like, okay, Goku and Vegeta are actually trying now. So it becomes like, you know, we're waiting. When is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? I don't think it adds a lot to do it this way, but there is, I guess, a strategic element to this. And the way that I could really describe this is if I talk about a different show that has nothing to do with Dragon Ball. One of my favorite shows of all time is Twin Peaks. And I guess I'll just go a quick description of why this matters. So Twin Peaks is a show that was, I think it was first created and filmed in like the early 90s, like 90, 91, something like that. So they had the first 2 seasons in like 90 and 91. And essentially it's about these murders that happen, and they have to bring in this FBI agent. And the main character, the protagonist, is this FBI agent who's like always on top of things. He like is like the I guess the guy who just knows how to do everything. He's never wrong. He's always correct. He always does everything correctly. And so we go through the first 2 seasons of the show, and then the show ends at the end of season 2. They cancel the show, whatever. And they actually bring the show back for season 3, but season 3 is like, I don't know, 2017 or something, 2016. So it's like 25 years after the end of season 2. And so everyone's like, all right. And the protagonist's name is Agent Cooper. So like, okay, Agent Cooper's back. He's going to solve everything. It's going to be great. Can't wait to see Agent Cooper. It's like, I'm equating Agent Cooper to like Super Saiyan 3 Goku. So they bring back season 3 of the show. And everybody's like, all right, guys, Agent Cooper is going to be here. He's going to solve everything. And I think the 3rd season ends up being, I don't remember how many. I think it's like 9 or 10 episodes or something. I don't remember exactly how many it is. But for the first like 9 episodes, Agent Cooper is essentially in what I would describe as a coma. So Agent Cooper is like this very dumb, I guess just like he doesn't really have the ability to do anything, and it's just completely different than what we've experienced in the first 2 seasons. And the reason why the director and creator of the series is David Lynch, who unfortunately just passed away. But the reason why David Lynch, I think, decided to do it that way and essentially just make the character everybody was so excited and you know, we're looking forward to seeing throughout the entirety of season 3 until the final episode, essentially, is because he wanted to build up the expectation and he wanted to make it seem and feel that much more special when it actually happened. And for a lot of people, it did actually pay off, right? We finally see the protagonist, Agent Cooper, essentially awaken from this coma-esque state. He's back to his normal self. He goes in, he fixes things, he gets everything correct, he solves the issues, and everything essentially is well, the ending is very subjective, but he becomes his past self again. So that to me is kind of similar to how they handled like Goku in the series. Goku and Vegeta and Piccolo are all miniaturized. They even talk about in the beginning of the series how it's affecting their ability to be able to fight because they're not used to the child bodies. And it isn't really until we get to the end where, okay, now they're adults again, and now Goku and Vegeta can actually begin to fight at their full power. And it does work to an extent. It does really make it feel a lot more special than if they had just been adults the entire, like, imagine if it was just adult Goku and Vegeta and Piccolo the entire time, just like fighting Super Saiyan 3, Super Saiyan 4. Like, it would not have felt as special as if, okay, now we finally, after, 18 episodes of waiting, we get to see Super Saiyan 3 Goku, Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, or whatever it is. It wasn't Super Saiyan 4. Super Saiyan 4 Goku, Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta. It did, I think, add a lot more special elements to the end. But, I mean, I understand why people would have wanted to see more of, like, the high-stakes fighting earlier on. I think, to me, that does feel more of, like, a Dragon Ball thing to do as well, right? So, that's my take on how they handled this. But, yeah, you guys can let me know your thoughts on that are, so. When it comes down to it, I really did think Daima was a very enjoyable experience. And given all the pros, given all the cons, I can't give it a 10. I really did enjoy the final 4 episodes. To be honest, I enjoyed the entire thing. I thought the exploration was pretty cool. And it really did give a lot of RPG vibes to me. And you guys can go back and look at my weekly episode reviews. I really talk about that a lot. And generally, my reviews of the episodes were pretty positive. There were a few that I didn't really enjoy that much, but overall, I feel like the series genuinely deserves either an 8.5 or 9 out of 10 from me. Us not having a new episode this Friday, I mean, it really does actually feel like, I really wish I had another episode to watch and review because it's kind of become a routine for me now. But I really did enjoy Daima. I think an 8.5 or a 9 is very fair to the series. Certainly a lot of cons, which I mentioned throughout this video, but you guys could let me know what you think of Dragon Ball Daima. What was your experience with this? And if you guys are still watching the dub, let me know how that's going as well. Yeah, I'll probably do a watch through the dub as well I'm probably not going to do a weekly thing, but when it gets fully finished and we can go back and watch throughout all 20 episodes, maybe I'll do a watch through on the dub because I do think the dub is pretty well done too. So, Dragon Ball Daima, the newest series, is now over. This was my review. I'm going to give it an 8.5 or a 9. I'll probably stick with an 8.5 because the cons were pretty noticeable. But overall, really enjoyed the series, and I'm excited to see where they go from here with Dragon Ball. Maybe the return of Super in the manga, and then down the line we can get the anime coming back as well. We could see Moro, we could see Granola, and then past that as well, right? We go through Superhero. I don't know if I would like to see a retelling of Superhero in anime. Maybe, we'll see. But let me know what you guys think of Daima. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next one.